Hello and welcome. My name is Nikki Paterson and I am Business Solutions Manager with Tourism Northern Ireland. Tourism Northern Ireland's Business Solutions team connects Northern Irish tourism businesses with international B2B buyers across travel, trade, MICE and Gulf markets. We work closely with a range of stakeholders and international partners to create practical routes to market, delivering familiarisation visits, supporting access to overseas trade shows and events, presenting Northern Ireland directly to operators, and hosting buyers here on the ground in Northern Ireland. Our role is to build meaningful commercial connections between NI industry and international operators, helping convert global demand into real opportunities here on the ground. I'm pleased to welcome you to this short pre-recorded market insight update delivered in partnership with the incoming Tour Operators Association. Tourism Northern Ireland works closely with ITOA as part of international business-to-business trade strategy, and we recognise the significant role their members play as a route to market for Northern Ireland. ITOA represents leading inbound tour operators and destination management companies who are actively programming the island of Ireland for international visitors and whose decisions directly influence where visitors travel, how long they stay, and which experiences are included on the programmes. Our partnership with ITOA is a practical one. Together we deliver a joint annual workshop in Northern Ireland, creating direct opportunities for local tourism businesses to meet operators, build relationships and secure international business. That close working relationship allows us to stay connected to operator sentiment, understanding what's performing well, where challenges exist and how international demand is evolving. It's in that context that today's update is particularly valuable. I'm going to hand you over to Alva Pearson-Downey, who will today take you through an update of ITOA, their members and their role and their importance and significance to Northern Ireland and our industry, some key findings from the ITOA members survey, and then she's going to look at the challenges and within the markets at the moment, the challenges and the positive factors, and then we'll wrap up with coming back to ourselves with the support resources available in Tourism Northern Ireland. So thank you very much, and I'm delighted to hand over to Alva Pearson-Downey, Chief Executive of ITOA.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you very much. And I am absolutely delighted to be joining today's webinar. And as Nikki mentioned, and for those of you that don't know me, my own name is Alva Pearson-Downey and I'm Chief Executive to the ITOA. So as Nikki said, I've prepared out a number of slides for you to tell you a little bit about the ITOA and our members, and indeed to provide, as Nikki says, an update on the current position of the season. So we'll get straight into the presentation. And we will move firstly in terms of what is the ITOA. So the ITOA is the Inbound Tourism Operators Association of Ireland. It is an all-Ireland body. It is a sectorial representation body which promotes the activities of our members and the worldwide travel trade distribution channel with whom our members partner and deliver Ireland as a package tourism product. And then in terms of what does the ITOA do? Well, the ITOA, first and foremost, we provide advocacy for our members. And we're always very, very keen to collaborate with other representative organisations and with tourism agencies on industry-wide issues. We provide promotional platforms similar to the workshops which Nikki mentioned in her slides that take place in November every year with you, our valued suppliers. And we raise the profile within Irish tourism on the importance of the global travel trade distribution channel. And bear in mind that Irish tourism depends on this channel and depends on overseas visitors, as it makes up over 70% of Irish tourism on an annual basis. So we provide useful insights to tourism agencies and departments about what's actually happening on the ground in those overseas markets. And we provide training and development opportunities for our members. And we also conduct ongoing research, as do our members, specific to certain markets. And then I suppose a little bit on what we don't do. So in no means, way, shape or form are we a representative association. We don't do any kind of collective marketing. We don't do contracting on behalf of our members because we're not a marketing organisation. And obviously all of our members are independent commercial entities in their own right. And we certainly don't do any form of price negotiations with our suppliers. Our members then, who are our members? So we have 33 members, and they are all, as I mentioned, independent commercial companies. And again, just for everyone to understand that they do vary in terms of how they do their business. So some of our members are tour operators, some are handling agents who very much work with tour operators in the overseas markets. Others are DMCs, destination management companies, and others are PCOs, professional conference organisers. So as you can see, there's a very wide variety within our membership. To just talk you through then a little bit about the advantages of working with ITOA members, well, first and foremost, they are well-established businesses that will be highly recognisable across the tourism industry in Ireland. They provide a mix of business, and they've a very well-established distribution channel. They've a very well-established customer base. They've market intelligence, so they're experts in travel across the globe and bringing people to Ireland. They provide a base of business that could be 6, 12, 18 months out or even more. So from your perspective as a supplier on the ground, if you're going to be working with one of our members, the advantage there is that they'll be able to tell you, 6, 12, 18 months more or out as to what business they're most likely to bring to you for the coming season. They're Irish based, so they're based here on the island of Ireland, and that means therefore that you've ease of access in order to communicate with them. They have very long established relationships. So generally speaking, if you work with an ITOA member, they're really going to give you business. Generally, they tend to, as such, give you business on a year-on basis. And most of all, which is very critically important, they are a more sustainable tourism product, because the visitor that we would bring stays longer, and they would visit and they would consume more tourism product as part of their packaged holiday or business tourism experience. And that therefore means that their customers spend more time while they're on the island of Ireland. So what do ITOA members do? Well, they market and they sell the island of Ireland, and they do that by bundling together the entire tourism product. So that's a key role that they have. It's in designing and influencing Ireland package product with their international travel trade partners, and that is primarily what they do. They engage with over 4,000 global trade partners across the international markets in influencing Ireland's packaged product. And that's how they deliver the customers that they do. We would have members that would work direct with the consumer, with group organisers, and direct with clients. And the other thing is that when a visitor is in the island of Ireland, the ITOA member will manage their experience on a 24/7 basis. Members also conduct ongoing research in the marketplace because they're always looking for new opportunity. And within that, ITOA members are regarded very much as on-Ireland experts. Our members, from your perspective as a supplier on the ground, they offer you that extension, that Salesforce arm to your marketing department that brings your product into the overseas markets. And after spending so much time in the overseas markets, the ITOA members have their finger on the pulse and they know what's happening in all of those markets. So who then is the customer of the ITOA member? So I think it's really important, firstly, to understand that for the vast majority of members, they work on a B2B, so a business-to-business basis. Over 90% of the members would work on a B2B basis, and minimal, less than 10, would work on a B2C, a business-to-consumer basis. And that equates to, as I say, for less than about 10%. So in terms of the leisure business then, who are their customers? So whether they're going to be a global tour operator with whom they partner with, or maybe they're a group organizer or a wholesaler, perhaps they're a travel agent, and the wider travel agent consortia to which our members would be partners and preferred partners with. And then, as I say, there's Consumers Direct, and we also provide a great deal of individual FIT business as well, leisure business as well. It's packaged, that FIT just is packaged, it's packaged product for independent visitors. And then, as I say, there's also special interest groups, and there's operators, and there's organizations as well. On the other side then, who are the customers for those that engage in the business side of the market for business travel, or what's more commonly known as the MICE, so meeting, incentive, conference and events. And really there you're talking about incentive houses globally, with conference organizers, association conference organizations, and then directly as well with blue chip multinational corporate companies for conferences and events as well. So if you're liaising with one of our members, this is the common language that they would use. They would refer to the business categories, the business that they're receiving from their customers. So the business categories that they would speak to you with would be, for example, a tour series. Now, a tour series is defined as a regular piece of business. It generally takes place weekly. It does the same itinerary rotation each week and every week. Normally operates right the way around from, say, April to October. And what I would say is, if you're working with one of our members in relation to a tour series, it's most likely that on the same day of the week, every week from April around to October, you're working with them in facilitating for looking after those customers who are on that tour series experience. Special events kind of speaks for itself. For example, the American football or the NFL game that you might be familiar with. Ad hoc groups then are bespoke. They are groups that are managed on a one-off basis, that our member would design a specific itinerary and program to a customer's budget for a group travel experience together. After that, then we have our we have our FIT. So as I mentioned previously, our FIT are our individual travelers. And again, it's working with them on a packaged experience or a self-drive or a chauffeur experience. It's a short break leisure experience. The study and special interest groups kind of speaks for itself in terms of its name and its title. Business travel then, again, as mentioned, is that high-end incentive. It's that corporate meeting group business. And again, it's generally very good business that comes in from blue chip companies that maybe want to reward their staff or their clients with an incentive all experience paid trip to Ireland. Or indeed, it may be that they're doing a corporate meeting. And conferences are there as well. Events and festivals, again, St. Patrick's Day is just behind us, so that would be a very typical example of the members that work around events and festivals, or indeed you have the Halloween festivals as well as another example. This chart here is, in a way, what I'm trying to maybe do is give you an example of how the kind of interpret in a way, I suppose, for you in terms of how the whole travel trade distribution channel works. So as I've said before, it's a very well established distribution channel. Our members would engage with over 4,000 international trade partners in the overseas markets. So down the bottom of the chart, you can see yourselves. So in that pale green section there, that's all of you, all of our valued suppliers. So our members would contract with every type of product across the tourism ecosystem. And in doing so, they put together, as I mentioned, packages suited to group, leisure, FIT, or business travel. And they sell them then in turn. So you can see the ITOA member, they take in all of the offering and package it from the pale green, from the suppliers, and they sell it in turn then into market to overseas leisure tour operators, individual conference organizers, and so forth. That may also go again to another international trade partner, such as the travel agent or the group organizer. And then we get to the very end, which is in turn the customer in market. And, you know, there the journeys are the steps away from yourselves and on to then ultimately the end user, who is the customer. And that is how all of the business comes to Ireland, be it holiday, leisure or business tourism experiences. So how do ITOA members win their business? And this just is taking you through in a brief overview in terms of how we work within market and the marketing activities that we undertake. So every year the ITOA conducts an independent survey from a company called CHL, and through that we are able to gain insights as to the activities and the spend and the visitor numbers delivered by ITOA members. So what I can say to you is that in 2025 ITOA members spent 15.5 million marketing and selling the island of Ireland in the overseas markets, and that's up from 10.4 million that was spent by the 33 members in 2024. They do that in numerous different ways. They do it by attending trade fairs, participating in organised sales missions, regular in-market sales calls. So most of our companies could be once, twice, 3 times in the month in market in the overseas markets, or indeed they can have full-time representatives or staff who are working in those markets and who conduct regular sales calls and are constantly seeking out as well new customers or keeping alive the existing relationships that they have. Another key role that ITOA members have is with those international trade partners that they engage with. They also undertake to train the staff within those trade partner offices, and making the new staff that come on board within those offices aware of the tourism offering and the product that's available in the Irish market. We would also provide targeted familiarization trips and educational trips, and when a piece of business is closer to conversion, we'd work with site inspections, bringing the client into market to experience firsthand what the offering would be should they go ahead for their client. We would involve ourselves with rate proposals, bids, and so on and so forth, and we work with the online trade and on consumer websites. We also strongly collaborate with Tourism Ireland and Tourism Northern Ireland for selling the island of Ireland in the international markets. And as I say, ITOA would be seen as the sales force for supporting those marketing efforts. I mentioned to you a moment ago that the ITOA conduct an independent annual survey every year, and I mentioned that shows how we perform, because it is very much for us all about delivering those export earnings into the Irish economy, because all of the business that we do comes from the overseas markets. So if I just gave you a little overview then in terms of that survey result for 2025. So the 33 members of the ITOA in 2025 delivered 716,200 promotional visitors into the island of Ireland. The ITOA members themselves spent on the ground with the suppliers within the island 305.4 million, and you can see the percentages there as to where that money went. The actual tourists then themselves that was handled by the ITOA member, collectively those 716,200 visitors spent 673 million whilst holidaying in the island of Ireland, and that represents 12.5% of the total national tourism receipt. From your own perspective then, as a supplier on the ground in terms of the needs of your business and which business categories suit you best, the relevance there comes for you in the categories of business. So 67% is how much group business was delivered by the ITOA members in 2025. Those individual guests that I mentioned, the leisure individuals, they represented, the FIT represented 24%, and MICE, the meeting, incentive, conference and event business, represented 9%. I also said earlier in the presentation that ITOA, the business that the members deliver into the island of Ireland, is a more sustainable offering because on average our guests stay longer. So the average length of stay for an ITOA tourist in 2025 was 8 nights for groups and 5 nights for FIT. That's what we averaged out at. Again, relevant to your business as well is where do those customers come from? So of the 716,200 promotable visitors, North America was 59% of where those visitors came from. Continental Europe rose by 2% on the previous year and went to 28%. Great Britain was 10% and rest of world was 3%. I mentioned earlier as well that we spent 15.5 million marketing the island of Ireland to our overseas global trade partners in 2025, and that was compared to 10.4 million in 2024. Just on this next slide then, I also mentioned about the long length of time spent in market in the international markets. So collectively, those 33 members spent 2,260 days traveling within the overseas markets, demonstrating that Ireland was open for business. Also then, just to give you a sense of bed nights, so ITOA members generated 1.8 million bed nights across the island in 2025. Another fact that I always think is a good one to have for suppliers in terms of understanding when the business will generally come to you. So 79% of ITOA tourists arrived between May and September. So May, June, July, August, September. 14% were Pacific to the months of April and October combined, and the remaining 7% arrived in March, November, and December. Okay. Then in terms of where the distribution of the economic worth. So on the previous slide, we saw the 683 million. So in terms of economic worth, 34% of that went into Dublin City, and then 66% of that was dispersed across the regions in Ireland, and taking note that Northern Ireland received 10% of that economic worth of the 683 million. I'm just going to move then, as Nikki said, across just to some insights on the market for 2026. Now, to say and to be fair in respect to this, that when I narrated this slide back in January, we were obviously in a very different political position as we find ourselves in today. At that stage, ITOA members were coming off the back of a very, very good 25 season. The USA markets had performed well, and indeed, as the independent results showed from our independent survey, the European markets had grown by 2% on the previous year. We had moved to 28% of our business coming from the European markets. And at the beginning of the season, during our January AGM and council meeting, which took place on the last weekend in January, the ITOA sentiment across membership was varied at that time. So those dealing in FIT, some said at that stage that it was a very mixed bag for 2026. Essentially, they were saying that they had had awful days and they had good days in terms of booking and conversion patterns. Others said group and tour series and ad hoc groups were more successful for them than their FIT. And those that were dealing in the MICE market felt at that stage, and I'm still referring to the back end of January where we did a tour of the table at our AGM, and those dealing in the MICE market felt that 2026 was shaping up softer than the previous year, that they had a huge amount of inquiries, a lot of inquiries coming in, but that the conversion was proving difficult, just simply more difficult to contract. And in reality, we can actually see that that was the case. So I mentioned to you that the marketing budget that was spent in market in 2025 rose to 15.5 million compared to 10.4 the previous year. And we know that that significant rise took place at the back end of the year last year, where really ITOA members would have been very much focused on 2026 at that stage and 2027. So when it's difficult, when the market is getting more complex, obviously they spend more time in market. A lot of the senior members of the ITOA, of the independent commercial companies, in market, trying to engage with their trade partners to get the conversion and to get Ireland chosen as part of whatever program they were looking to do. So we could see that happening. We could see that the conversion was certainly getting more complex. And that's the way it was unfolding in the back end of January. And certainly as well, those that were in the Canadian market, they felt that, you know, a lot of them, the 2025 was actually the very best year that they've had. But at the back end of January, they were feeling that 2026 had become somewhat discount driven, that the market was waiting out for discounts and they just weren't as quick for 2026 to spend. So on the whole, as I say, the back end of January, members' overall sentiment was that conversion of inquiries was difficult and the market was softer. There was also soundings from the ultimate kind of premium luxury that they weren't being wowed by the offering that was being put in front of them, referenced as the premium luxury offering, that for the price, when they were comparing it to premium offers available in other European destinations, that for what was being charged, the package wasn't as wow in comparison. So that was very new, because normally the luxury market was, you know, without concern, but that was a new sentiment that was starting to drop in. And obviously since that, in recent weeks, we have gotten thrown into a very difficult, or very different, should I say, a very different geopolitical scenario. So on the 6th of March, I was on a Tourism Ireland Central Partnership meeting where sentiment was shared by the group. And at that time, my reading of the feelings that were shared and the sentiment shared within the group was, you know, that it was too early to see an actual impact in terms of the Middle East. But the biggest fear that could unfold and could have the biggest impact was around the price of oil and where that could land. And obviously, given the price of oil, with that rising and rising, would flights get too expensive? You know, currently we're quite safe in terms of, you know, airline pricing is moderate. So the fear there, would oil prices drive up the cost of airline flights? And also, if that was to continue to be the case, would less popular destinations perhaps get dropped? So we are an island, and obviously we have access to a lot of gateways. But if this crisis was to continue, and if oil prices were to continue to rise, would airlines then try to manage their costs by removing gateways of less popularity? There was also a feeling I felt taken from that meeting on the 6th of March. And there was examples, say, of some MICE programs which were booked into Dubai and looking in the short term to move to safer destinations, and looking to consider European destinations and possibly even Ireland in the mix, as opposed to bringing their programs into the Middle East. My reading as well of that meeting on the 6th of March was, at that stage, on the 6th, that the US airlines felt that they weren't at that point seeing any significant impact, you know, in terms of booking patterns. But as I say, that was the 6th of March at that stage. But it was felt that perhaps a negative impact could come into effect from the calling out of UK, Germany and France being raised to a level 2 concern for safety in terms of travel by the US citizens. So there was concern that that could cause uncertainty and nervous disposition as well. So I think in total, it's fair to say that during that call on the 6th, most of the focus was on oil prices and the potential impact that that could cause to everything. And some Some had seen in the short term cancellations from corporate companies not wanting to fly, but the overriding feeling was it was too early to really call it one way or another, that it was early days in respect to the whole situation. Going into that call, I obviously engaged as well with our own members to feel the sentiment across the ITOA, and their sentiment in general was very, very similar, and their feedback given was very, very similar. Some had live inquiries that were for travel in July and September, but they did have to place a pause on that business because the clients were nervous, and that was for a number of FIT programs and a number of ad hoc groups. I had another member who reverted back to me and said nothing major currently, except a few of their US clients were making inquiries, and a lot of time was being spent providing, TLC and reassurance in terms of the terms and conditions and how everything would unfold if the crisis was to continue. I had another member who had received a request from a French potential group that were looking to reroute from the Middle East to Ireland. So there was a MICE business opportunity in that client. And most of the other ITOA members reverted back to say that they were very simply in a wait and see mode. And as I say, other members was kind of the same scenario, that when they were in the MICE side of the business category, that they had received inquiries about moving business out of the Middle East to Europe. So the general feeling as such was across the board, across membership, across ITOA, is the longer that it goes on, the greater the impact. And at the moment, it's only affecting a short window. It's the start of the season. We're not into the height of the season. It's very much a wait and see. And as I say, the longer it goes on and turmoil continues, the greater would be the risk to booker confidence and the greater impact on the difficulty of conversion. And very much oil prices, because they could play havoc with airline prices and other pricing, obviously the cost of doing business on the ground. All of that is a factor that has to be considered. And within that, we're already in a sensitive place in terms of pricing and our competitive piece in the market. So I think in conclusion for today's webinar, what I would say is that flexible terms and conditions will be required by all service providers, all of us across the tourism ecosystem, to try and navigate the needs of the customers. If they're in a nervous disposition, it's giving them the reassurances and having flexibility around terms and conditions that we can retain and hold on to bookings. The other thing I'd probably say to suppliers on the ground from a business perspective is to ensure that you have your 2027 rates in circulation and available, because if postponements do play out and do come into effect, we're looking at further window scenarios, then obviously placement of business into 2027 could be relevant for certain business categories. So having access to those rates will enable and facilitate that postponement and resetting of business into different months. So I genuinely hope that what I've presented today here on the webinar, I hope that it was of some help. As I say, the environment around us is very much ever changing. So from the recording of this webinar to the next day, the sentiment and the mood and everything around the world that we live in can have, a lot of changes introduced for us. But what I can say with confidence is that ITOA members have always been positive, and many of our members are in business for longer than the association itself, and the association is 48 years in existence. And in that time, we've navigated our way through a large volume of crisis. We've always remained positive. We've always come out the other side. We were confident about 2026. We are confident about 2026. We just need to see how the greater political environment unfolds. So thank you very much to Tourism Northern Ireland, our wonderful collaborative partners. Thank you indeed to Nikki, who I'm going to pass you back across to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Alva. That was very useful, and really appreciate the update and the overview of your member survey. Brilliant to hear all of your members doing so well, and also for our tourism industry, north and south, equally on that side of things. And also great to hear your sort of take on the market just recently and the way things could be. But good to note that it's just potentially uncertain at the moment, and it could be changing day by day. But thank you very much for all of that. Before we wrap up, just a couple of questions. From our own point of view, are you able to tell us if we had a new industry partner, for example, and they wanted to engage with some of your members, potentially outside of the workshops that we run, so throughout the year, is there somewhere that they can find out and research about them? And what do you recommend is the best way for them to kind of get your members, I suppose, to take notice in a really busy marketplace and during a busy schedule?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think what I'd probably say, Nikki, is the ITOA website, so www.itoa-ireland.com. That website is a new, fresh website. It should be quite clean to navigate through. And when you go into that website, there is a list for members. And actually, we always hold on to the catalogue as well, which is as somebody said to me that phoned the ITOA number yesterday, it's a real cheat guide. So if you click to download the catalogue, now you can navigate through the members and you can circulate through to their website. But if you actually download the catalogue, there, I think it's page 7 or 11, you'll get the list of all the ITOA members, and it's a clickable page, so it'll bring you right on to that ITOA member, and underneath the little paragraph where it outlines what that member's business categories are, it actually has the name and the email address and the job title of the person that attended the latest ITOA workshop. So Excellent. At this time of year, it has the East Coast, West Coast workshop, because we've just come out the back of them. And please God, then later on in the year, it'll have in November, December, the Northern Ireland workshop catalogue will be loaded. And again, you'd see the email address. So that would actually get them to be in a position that they could send a direct email. And what I would say to them with that is there is a document which I know you work with similarly, like a saleable experience document that gives the key points to your offering. It gives kind of the program in terms of what the offering is, how many people it suits, and so on and so forth. So be quite concise and factual in that information, but also take the time beforehand to go on to the members' website and know, is the business category ad hoc group, is it FIT, is it MICE? And then tailor your email to that effect to say that you've experience in dealing with FIT, or if it's MICE, show that you're knowledgeable of the business category they do, that you've the experience in dealing with it, and put forward your best experience.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much, Alva. That's really useful and really great to know. And suppose those real nuances about getting the right person, potentially the person that was at the ITOA workshops, and also, tailoring your sales pitch, if you like, and making sure that you're pitching the right product to the right operator, and you have all that information on your website, which is really helpful. I suppose that brings us back to Tourism Northern Ireland here, and just for our industry as well. So the business solutions team, as I said earlier, is the interface between industry and, I suppose, our partners and stakeholders in international markets. So we're more than happy to help anyone that would like to, engage further with ITOA or work with Tourism Ireland. We can provide that conduit, if you like. And what we would say as well is, if you do have any new products or product updates or so on and so forth that you think would be helpful, please do share them with our own team. We're regularly out presenting directly to ITOA members and international operators, but we also compile a number of farm trips throughout the year, and many of them are with ITOA members, and they could be educational for new members or existing members. So we are always interested in new product to put on those farm trips and to showcase, because that's what we're here to do, is showcase the very best of what everyone has. Aside from that, we also have a new e-learning portal. So just back to Alva, her talking about, I suppose these operators are extremely busy throughout the year. So it's important that when we get any sort of time with them, whether that be at ITOA or in an email, that we're getting our pitch right and we're talking to them, I suppose, speaking their language, if you like. So Tourism NI have recently launched a Travel Trade Ready program, and that is a short, it's short bite-size modules really of learning around how to engage with the travel trade. It probably takes about 3 hours in total to complete, but it's always on, so you can complete it at your own pace. But I would say for anybody newly engaging in international travel trade with ITOA members or in the international markets or going to any of our shows, that's really useful, particularly if you're a first time entering that market, but even if you have been doing it for a long time, as a refresher, because it talks about pitch and contract and commissionable rates and all of the things that will really help you get the most out of any meetings or engagements that you do have with the operators. And then aside from that, we also have a content pool. It's www.northernirelandscontentpool.com, and on there is a range of images, videos that you can use for your own presentations and that you can download before you go overseas. And then finally, really important to make sure that you're signed up to tourismni.com to the newsletter for Business Solutions, which is where you will get expressions of interest for all opportunities throughout the year, both in market in Northern Ireland, the likes of ITOA and Meet the Buyer, but also all of our international platforms, of which there are about 70 of them delivered throughout the year across all of the priority markets in collaboration with Tourism Ireland. So Business Solutions are here to help you. Our email address is businesssolutions@tourismni.com. So myself and the team are here on hand to help you. So thank you very much. And Alva, thank you for today. That was really worthwhile. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nikki. Thanks.